camera out here in beautiful Miami, in this beautiful hotel room looking at the ocean. I think I'll choose LBI over here, but it's still nice to be in the sun. So over to you.
I actually fully agree with that. Not even as a joke. I mean, it's a beautiful place. Love it. Certainly, the weather is a little different in the winter, but in terms of an ocean break, hands down LBI all day, every day. And by the way, Dr. Beach of Florida International University, recognizes the #1 beach expert in the country, agrees with me, because LBI is the second-rated swimming beach in all of America by Dr. Beach at Florida International University, just as a fun fact. So, as we drop in today, what do Bernie Madoff, the horrific person that had abused gymnasts, Jerry Sandusky, that abused tons of children at Penn State, what do those people have in common? What do those people have in common? They have a bunch of things in common. But more importantly, what do the people who interacted with those people have in common? What do the people who interacted with those people have in common? And let's see in the chat. The people who interacted with those people, the beginning, the middle, and before the end, what do those people have in common? I know, what do you think? Let's hop in. We got anybody who wants to jump in out there? How about let's go with Diana or Gina? Let's bring those fine ladies of Unblinded up. Are they present, Adam?
I can't see what the
give me some optics.
Pull them up. We can't.
I'm not seeing them. I got Diana.
Yeah, Diana, let's go, Diana. Good morning, Diana. How are you?
I don't see Diana, but I'm here.
All right, Gina, awesome. Baba Booey, we need your support. Love you, man. So, Gina, what do the people who dealt with Sandusky, somebody give me the name of the horrible doctor that went to prison for what he was doing with gymnasts and other young women, as well as
Nasser.
What's that?
Diana.
Larry Nasser.
Nasser is his name, Chaz?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah, Nasser. So Nasser, Sandusky, and Madoff.
Madoff.
Yeah. What do the people who dealt with them, Gina, what do they have in common?
What do the people that dealt with them have in common?
Yes.
Yes. Sean, I'm going to have, please tell me what they have in common.
Chaz, what do you think they have in common?
They were allowed to continue what they were doing because people were uncomfortable to confront them.
Say it again, Chaz.
They were allowed to continue, and I'll add the heinous and disgusting, terrible acts that they were doing because people were afraid to confront them.
Yes. And in that process, they did something that Malcolm Gladwell and the studies that he cites, because it's not his word, it was one of the studies he cites, called default to truth. Default to truth. And you go, well, this doesn't sound very fun on Fun Friday. Of course it is. Because if you are able to stand in your power and step into truthful confronting, the cortisol level, the stress in your world decreases magically. It decreases powerfully if you're able to default to truth, not default to truth. And you're able to confront and lean in and ask the difficult questions. So it's like, this is a concept of your leadership for your building, your scaling, your growing. And in the space of integrity, it's critical to understand the boundaries of agreements. And so what do I mean? So taking half a step back, in the Bernie Madoff situation, people saw that something didn't make sense. They were uncomfortable. They realized that the investment returns were too consistently the same number and that just something didn't make sense. And the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, had somebody that was consistently reporting Bernie Madoff and what he was doing, and they did not respond. And the guy was saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and was reporting Madoff, and nothing happened, number one. Number two, in the Nasser situation, and this is no judgment on these people, we're confronting a suboptimal dynamic of mastery. in confronting, a lot of these people in the master situation let things go by because they're like, well, he has a great reputation, and the doctor, like, we know that whatever he's saying he's supposed to be doing is he's creating these examinations of women, that's what his technique is. So they defaulted to truth. With Sandusky, one of the coaches, and this has led to the downfall of Joe Paterno. And by the way, I'm not judging Joe Paterno in this situation at all, because people default to truth. He's been vilified. There's immense division about whether he did what he should have done or shouldn't have done, and all the things. So, and of course, like, being careful that you don't distort my words. The concept of sexual abuse in anybody that would conspire in its allowance is as heinous an act as could possibly be perpetrated. I had a family member, multiple family members, in fact, not my direct children, to be clear, that were sexually abused as children by family members and others. I've had extensive experience working with some of the highest and most qualified people in the country, and I've spent more than 6 figures myself giving money, not as donations, to support the treatment of people in my family that were sexually abused and trying to help them get to the other side. And the dynamics were horrific and mind-bending, the dynamics. And I'm sure people on this line have been abused, and my heart goes out for it. But we don't fail to talk about these things, because we have to talk about things to be able to, like, have context to support things, right? So in dealing with Jerry Sandusky, somebody heard things and reported them, and the people they reported them to did not end up getting to the bottom of it. Let's just go with that. And there were certainly very legitimate questions, if not more than legitimate questions, about the level that the investigation should have been conducted at. But the bottom line is they defaulted to truth because of how, like, Jerry Sandusky's been around here forever, and of course, like, he has such a great relationship with these young boys, and of course, right? And so when we're looking at defaulting to truth, what we're sharing with you is, why are we bringing all this up? We're bringing it all up because when you're busting your tail and you're out there building ecosystem value and capital, as you're building ecosystem value and capital, you are, when you're working with people, have your ears tuned. See what their actions are. See what the vibe is. When somebody says, yeah, I'm going to bring 5 people to your Clubhouse Invitational, or I'm going to do a 5 and 5 with you, and they bring 1, there's a beautiful saying. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Now, I am also present to the immense complexity of assessing who you should be doing business with or not, what you should be looking at or not, because there's many wonderful, heart-centered, great people you should not be doing business with because they don't have influence mastery. They don't have self-mastery, and they don't have process mastery. So the litmus test is not, I only do business with good people and heart-centered people. It should not end there. The litmus test should be that you do business with integrous people that are heart-centered and that are highly skilled and highly urgent. Integrous, heart-centered, highly skilled, highly urgent. That would be our unblinded recommendation of who you are spending time doing business with. Because just wonderful, beautiful, heart-centered people, maybe they should be a coaching client, but they should not be your ecosystem partner if they're not going to be able to go out and co-create, right? And if you're in the initial stages of ecosystem merger, chase nobody. Chase nobody. You're looking for people that are aligned, that are urgent, that see in you what you see in you, that see in you what you see in you. And let me like get all the way into a couple more micro distinctions. So you've heard me talk about, and this is what training we on? This is an ecosystem merger training on how to decide when you should continue with somebody and when you should leave the relationship, right? When you should continue and when you should leave the relationship. And I'm not saying to leave it mad, just leave the relationship because maybe there's a misalignment on who you are, what you can do, or maybe there's just some clarity that you could bring about in a new and different way. So to move faster, for example, at this, we're bringing aboard somebody who has an enormous reputation in value exchange assessment. Somebody that's going to cost not a little, to bring aboard for Unblinded, as well as for Calgary Law, but a lot so we can create integrous agreements more rapidly, right? And assess value, because value exchange is not the same. So when I'm in the world of Tony Robbins, the value that Dean Graziosi can bring in the world of Tony Robbins is of a more immediate value on the short run than I can bring in the short run, because Dean Graziosi has enormous amounts of bandwidth in email list acquisition, for example, and to fulfill on immediate filling. Sorry, guys, there's a child screaming and yelling, which sounds like they're not that happy to be in Miami. They're not as happy as Adam and Fernando, and I believe Nicole are to be in Miami, but nonetheless, we love children. So when you're thinking about it, when Dean Graziosi ended up last March in the talk that I was told I was doing when the event was supposed to be, let's say in May, the event that was supposed to happen in March, was my ego hit? Yes. Was I angry? Yes. Was I frustrated? Yes. Was I told one thing and another thing happened? Absolutely yes. However, my assessment was I've been given enough. I've been given immense value, and I am immensely grateful. My conclusion. And I'm like, listen, I can't put email blast out there to 5 million people like this guy can from all the things they've leveraged to collect these email lists. I am super clear that people like me after I talk a lot better than they like him. I am super clear that in the long run, that's going to create problems for the Tony world. But I totally understand that in a pandemic, you have to make decisions and do what you're doing, right?
Sure.
Right? So who just said something? I heard somebody.
Rob Gill, I wanted to add one thing to that. Is that cool?
Yeah.
I think that also was the reason why you quadrupled down than Unblinded as well.
Yeah.
At that particular point.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that, Rob?
Where you invented the real raw and you began to do the innovations, right? Like at that point, you the group together, right? As the pandemic hit, we get into March, April, and there is the birth of the real raw.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And so, but watch this now. How often do you hear me cite Tony Robbins as the person that changed my life, number one? Number two, how often do you hear, I'm a member of Platinum Partnership Alliance, I pay $250,000 a year, and I will do so for the rest of my life until they kick me out?
At least once a day, probably more if I was next to you and heard every word that you said.
And Rob Gill, why do you think I say those things?
Because you honor source at all times and want to make sure that there's no confusion from source or anyone in his circle that could dilute, distort anything that you're saying and be misinterpreted on that side. Plus, it's in your heart.
Yeah. So for example, Rob, how often when you're out there, so you did not like Unblinded. Rob Gill did not like Unblinded, which had a long training on this in the internal team huddle because of a variety of different reasons. And quite frankly, because Unblinded in the beginning was breaking its agreements with Rob Gill. Sean Callaghy wasn't, but Unblinded was through the hands of others. And Rob Gill was not a happy camper, right? Rob Gill was not a happy camper. Despite that fact, Rob, right, when you were running, and by the way, Infinity X launched in part because of that. Fair or not?
Fair, yes.
Yeah, well, good. So give the, and not disparaging anybody, but you give the 30-second feel of where you, because by the way, this conversation is coming back home for how you can co-create. What I'm suggesting is your standard for what you're co-creating, your standard. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so when we created Infinity X, it was originally had a 19x your sales, and the point, and every episode on Tuesday night, we always talk about as the living, breathing example of the formula of Unblinded. But when we first did it, I would say that, and this is an example of the Callaghy results formula, whose language is now founded in Unblinded. But Infinity X was the thought behind it was we're the ones pounding our chest. We're the ones that are actually the example of what this formula is. I don't know about anybody else over there, but we're the ones. And it was a resentment that I had that I didn't properly personally speak with Sean about, and I kind of just let it go. And the longer I let it go, the more diluted the story got, at least in my own way of thinking. Had I been able to confront it earlier, it may have sped up the process. There still would have been there was a lot of dynamics happening. It wouldn't have been just one conversation. It would have changed. I mean, that's ridiculous to think that. But had I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier and I played in the space, well, I don't want to bring too much negative energy. Let me just stay over here and show what the fuck I could do. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah. But I, bit my nose off to spite my face in the long run from the acceleration standpoint.
Right. So this is all derives from the absence of a clear affirmative agreement. This all derives from the absence of clear affirmative agreement. So when you don't have affirmative clear agreement, that's when things can get wonky. So there's a thing called YBL, Your Best Life, that now is a current or former, I'm not sure, Platinum Partner Alliance that's launched this thing that is directly soliciting Plats and former Plats. Like, that's happening. And in fact, I've come to learn that there's some people in Unblinded that are part of that as well. So I want to be crystal clear, right? Here's how the world operates in our space of integrity. With Tony Robbins, I have never walked into a Platinum Partnership room and not 1 honored Tony, 2 honored Platinum Partnership, and 3 directly solicited anybody to come work with me. It has not happened. I have not said you should have a strategy session or complimentary session to any single person directly in the space of Unblinded. Have we offered people an opportunity to come on a real raw? Yes, that's happened. I've done that maybe with 3 or 4 people super close to me, but I have not done it generally. And with anybody I do it with, I say, all hail Tony Robbins. I'm a proud Plat. I'm paying my money forever. And I've never suggested that anybody inside of Plat or Lions recruit people out of there to come to be with Unblinded and leave Plat. And so here's why do I address all of this? I also share that I never post anything about an Unblinded event ever inside a Platinum Partnership or Alliance, because Tony Robbins has spent millions and millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars cultivating that ecosystem. Now, I give other value because I sell Platinum Partnership from stage. I sell it from stage. But there's no promotion of outside events inside of that chat because of what they've done and spent to build it, right? So we've said that publicly before, and I'm going to repeat it now. Inside of the Unblinded WhatsApps, there's no event promotion. That is not an unblinded sanctioned event. We've said that. People are violating that principle, right? And we're going to confront it. So, and not like meanly, like just can't happen. We don't want the chat to become a sales system and a marketing platform. We want it to be people encouraging each other, validating each other. We don't want you selling your services there. I don't do that to Tony. Don't do it to Unblinded, right? It gets confusing. It gets complicated, especially when people end up promoting and say, well, I work with Unblinded, or I did a thing with Unblinded. So like we said it, we're crystal clear. No more. People will be deleted and eliminated from those WhatsApps and chats if it happens, just like they are in Lions and Plats, right? So in addition, make clear agreements. So I made a mistake. I went on a trip to Necker Island recently, and I did not have a clear agreement. I'll never do it again. And when I went on the trip to Necker Island, right, all this could get really complicated when you have a bunch of people who want to be coaches going on into the future. And in that situation, the agreement was that I said, will I get a chance to speak? And the answer was yes, right? So what I view is if I'm getting a chance to speak, I get a chance to promote, right? And so what should have been done, though, because I did ask the question if it was done, but I should have the question directly with the organizer to say, listen, are you cool that I come there and I promote Unblinded? Because if you're not, I'm not coming. And it's totally okay, because I'm where I am in my life, and I do paid speaking, and I'm not coming to an island, right? Because I'm not clear there's anybody there I can learn something from that I need to learn. And respectfully from Sir Richard Branson, I'm already part of whatever I'm a part of. Amazing person, no doubt about it. But I'm only coming if it's clear I'm coming to teach something, I'm coming to promote Unblinded, and it's clear I get to follow up with everybody thereafter. If that's not clear, I'm not coming. And it would not have been wrong with the person to say it. It would not have been wrong. And it's not wrong of me to ask. So what I'm advocating for you is, there's a plane going by, excuse us, is when you're going to decide to go anywhere, if you're going to solicit if you're going to solicit, don't go to solicit unless you're speaking. And don't go and solicit unless you have a clear agreement with the event organizer, because they spend a lot of money to make that happen. You can go to merge ecosystems, but don't go to solicit if it's not something that you put the energy, the time, and the money into, unless you have a clear agreement about it. A clear agreement about it. And by the way I operate in the spaces I'm in, I have clear agreements. I've discussed it, I said it, all good, all cool, let's go, right? For the ways that I do what I do. So in terms of Unblinded, if you're having an event and all of a sudden you're recruiting 15 or 20 people in the Unblinded WhatsApp, and then during the event, you don't thank Unblinded, you don't acknowledge the formula, you don't say Sean Callaghy, then in our mind, in our rule structure, you're violating something called source. So when Rob was running Infinity X, even though he was pissed off and frustrated with certain things that leadership at Unblinded was doing at that time back in the day, he still honored source. I honor source of Tony Robbins all the time. If you hear me say something about myelin or brain wrapping, I say talent code. I acknowledge the book. So in acknowledgement, in integrity, and by the way, Deepak did something for Adam's birthday at one point, and I forgot who did it, and I didn't acknowledge it. We recreated it, acknowledged it at a later time, right? So the acknowledgement of source, the acknowledgement of action step isn't a one-time thing because you have an endless audience. So I say Tony Robbins, I say I'm a plat for life all the time because I may be having an audience here who's never heard it before. And so I want to make sure it's clear we are not trying to take people from that ecosystem. And by the way, anybody that tries to take people from the platinum ecosystem, I will be on the other side of the table from. I'm on the other side of the table from. And when I'm on the other side of the table, Rob Gill, how does that usually end up when I'm on the other side?
5 receiver. First of all, this is a 5 receiver set. Without a doubt, we're going full up. 5 receiver set offense. And if you're on the other side of that, and you're out of integrity on the other side, not on the other side because of a miscommunication, danger.
Yeah, and you could tell the people that run YBL I said it. Call them up and tell them.
Yeah, give me the number. I'll call them right now, please. What's the phone number?
Because when people operate in the background, they operate sneaky. They go and take what people built over their lifetime. I don't let that happen. I put the cape and the cow on, and I come flying across Gotham, and here we come. So we are now on high alert because I think also those people have solicited people in Unblinded to try to remove people from Unblinded into that organization. It's a competitive I am declaring that is a competitive organization with Unblinded. Take your pick. On that side or this side, that's what it is. So you go, wait a minute. Can't we all co-create? We can't co-create when people started soliciting before we had any reason to do that. And that has happened already. So we're not co-creating. They've attempted to take, and they affirmatively, I know this for a fact, they've affirmatively made statements to people that, why would you want to be a platinum partner when you could be here at YBL? So the fact that whether or not the leadership sanctioned that, that's what people are saying, right? And that's an enormous challenge. So that's not going to become like the drama of the week. I'm making the statement so you understand why we're not letting, because people put up their events inside of the WhatsApp, because we said it 50 different times. If you want to pay us to promote your events, we could have a conversation. If you want to make us a partner in your events, we'd have a conversation. Just like I have the conversation with the people in Tony Robbins. Before I go and post anything anywhere, I need that permission, I need an agreement, because we've spent millions of dollars to be where we are. And if you didn't spend millions of dollars to promote all this and create it, don't go taking it, because then it's stealing. So Adam Gugino, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I remember a time, this brought me back to being on stage at the event in January, and I did an exercise where I went through tonality, and I said I didn't say she stole the money, and I remember sourcing Zig Ziglar and his book, because I've always felt that deep inside, like when I'm using somebody else's language, or I'm using something I've learned from someone else, just to honor that source. As it's come natural for me. I felt uncomfortable not doing it. And, when it comes to where we are now, and when you look at, and then fast forward, I should say, from when I first learned that, and then at the solar company, we had to deal with not one, not two, but hundreds of people within the organization and around the organization looking to steal. And what we did was we put our heads down, and never did that. We stood by integrity, and we're doing that here. We even Unblinded, Sean, we have never looked to, take from other organizations. We don't, even with the amount of opportunity we've had to put down other groups, other trainings, other teachings, it one-on-one, even on phone calls, that is not done. So this is critical. Source, integrity, respect, they all go hand in hand.
Yeah. And so do we want everybody here building, growing, accelerating like crazy? Yes. Do we want everybody here co-combining, ecosystem merging, making things happen? Yes. Do we want people building their business by selling to unblinded clients as their primary form of business? That is not the reason to join this program. That is not the reason to join this program, and that's not the thing to do, right? Number one. Number two, in addition, honor source. Honor source. Number three, you cannot use and teach the formula in outside events unless we have a conversation about it and it's agreed to, right? I don't teach the triad. I'm not, you say, well, you talk about physiology. I knew about physiology before I met Tony Robbins, like a long time before that. We didn't say you couldn't teach about influence. You just can't teach the formula, right? And saying influence is a superpower, right, is our quote. You want to quote us on saying influence is a superpower, then quote us on saying influence is a superpower. Thank you. Sean Callaghan, Unblinded, right, boom. Thank you. Enough. You cited source, right? And some of you may not know this. This is like how you do legal books, and there's trademarks, and there's intellectual property. And P.S., Bruce Springsteen, who I love to no end, his album, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Darkness on the Edge of Town from 1978, I think it came out, was essentially his cry, his pain, his wounds from all the intellectual property theft and issues he dealt with in having this horrible management agreement that, like, during Born to Run, that was about to hinder and destroy his career going forward. And Bruce Springsteen, who's heart-centered, loves people, far on the left, progressive left, Bruce Springsteen militantly protects his intellectual property. His life's work militantly protects it. So it is entirely consistent with heart and love to protect what you build, right? And so that's your lesson for today. You can't.
Can I say one more thing, Sean? It is absolutely in service of everybody on this call who's a part of Unblinded. Protecting this is protecting all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Fernando, final.
Final is honoring source rises your identity. It might feel counterintuitive. Honoring source rises your identity. Back to you.
Guys, let's take this out. Everybody have a beautiful, fun Friday. Integrity means agreement, clarity. Integrity means adding more value than you're taking. Integrity means adding more value than you're taking. Chaz, take us out to Enter Sandman. Metallica.